So tonight's reading is about the organization of states. We have federal states. A federal state is a group of smaller states or provinces that operate under a larger federal government. So like the United States, the USA, we have our federal government, and then each state has power underneath it. So Florida is part of the United States. Similar countries that govern in a similar way would be Mexico, Brazil, Canada, Germany, Russia. Many large countries end up being federal states because it's really hard to manage as one central government of very, very large countries. So unitary states are usually smaller and more compact, and they have one central government. So if you're in a unitary state, you're not going to find a governor of a state or a province because they're all going to operate under, their president or their prime minister or maybe a king or whoever's in charge. So a unitary state has one central government, and examples would be Japan, France, and Ecuador. There's actually like 165 unitary states, so there's lots of examples. So again, federal states, they're going to have one large federal system that acts like an umbrella, and underneath it, smaller states or provinces that also can operate autonomously unless their actions contradict the federal government. So here you'll have something like a governor for a region or a state or a province, and then like a president or prime minister. And here you would just have a president or a prime minister operating over the entire country. A microstate is a small state that has sovereign power. So even though they're really tiny, they have equal power in places like the UN, and we consider them sovereign, so they're fully fledged governments. And it might be like a small island nation or a small city-state. There's a full table of them in your book. We also have something called a supranational organization. Supranationalism is when you have two or more sovereign states that align together for a common purpose. And the biggest one in the world is the United Nations. United Nations, they serve as a facilitator for discussions regarding international problems, and they were formed at the end of World War II. So they kind of continued the idea from World War I, Woodrow Wilson's idea of the League of Nations, and they continued and developed into the UN. On three separate occasions, the UN membership increased rapidly. So in 1955, after Nazi Germany broke up, 16 European countries joined. In 1960, after most of the European colonial powers left Africa completely, 17 African colonies joined. And then between 1990 and 1993, 26 new countries joined after the Soviet Union collapsed and broke up, as did Yugoslavia. If you see this, we have 193 members of the UN. See that South Sudan was added in 2010 as the most recent member. These kind of like peachy colored ones are the original members, and all the other colors are places that have joined since then. And the gray countries are ones that are not yet members of the UN. Some countries that are states that are contested territories that people aren't sure are their own states haven't joined yet. And then some microstates like the Vatican City hasn't joined yet. Another supranational organization is the European Union. The European Union is originally it was mostly an economic organization. So they have a common currency through all of Europe. It's up to 26 countries now, because the UK left, or is leaving right now. Within the European Union, you have one common passport, so you have an open border policy. So between EU states, you can move back and forth. You've got one monetary or one currency, and a free trade unit. Some other examples of supranational organizations are NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. NATO was really formed as a military agreement, and it was mostly Europe and the United States, really against Russia and other communist nations during the Cold War, and it's still around today. OPEC is the organization of petroleum exporting countries, and they regulate the price of oil. Most places classify them as a cartel because they control the price of a good. NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Alliance, is a free trade agreement between Canada, the United States, and Mexico, which is rapidly changing and may not actually be a free trade agreement anymore. So we'll see. But things like tariffs have been charged now between America and Canada. So we'll see what's happening with NAFTA. But that was, developed in the 1990s. The OAU is the Organization of African Union. So it's like the UN, but at a regional scale. And then the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund provide government loans to entire countries. So they aren't going to give businesses loans. They would give, Chad a loan to develop its infrastructure. So it's an economic organization. And that's it for tonight.